Get ready for an awesome show today. I have the pleasure of sitting down with the Stacey Harris. And if you don't know Stacey, oh my gosh, I have the pleasure of introducing you to her because she's full with lots of great information and nuggets. And today we're talking about building your 30-day social media strategy. Lots of great information in here, and she has got an amazing gift, which I will link to in the show notes. So get ready, tune in, grab a cup of coffee, or listen to us on the go. Episode 89 starts right now. Hey there, welcome to the Lora Shipman Show. We hang out here weekly to talk about things like social media, entrepreneurship, marketing, tools, strategies, tips, and it all starts right now. Hey there, before we get started with this show, I just want to share my passion with you. I love teaching people just like you how to master social media for business, breaking it down into easy to consume and easy to execute steps so that you can see immediate results. So whether you want to start a social media consultancy or grow your brand's presence on social media, I can help. I can help you get started and master all the things that you need to know. So I want you to go over to my website. It is filled with resources, tools, tips, and courses. Visit lorashipman.com. That's LORA shipman.com to get all the goods. Now, you ready for the show? I know I am. Let's get started.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. I'm so excited because I have the Stacey Harris with me today. And if you don't know Stacey, you're missing out because this girl rocks. She's always got such great content, ideas, strategies, all the things. Stacey, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. And it's funny because I still smile whenever people say the Stacey Harris, and I should stop, but it amuses me every time.
It's awesome. I love that. Well, for those people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you just give us a little insight?
Well, first of all, let's be sure everyone knows who I am. I mean, I'm Stacey Harris. I'm a digital marketing strategist with a sort of specialization in social media. My focus is really on building social media strategies. More specifically than that, like custom social media strategies, which I believe is what we're going to talk about today. Because so often we are bombarded with blueprints and formulas and like, oh, just do this and you'll get 10,000 Instagram followers, which is almost never true. And here's the other thing. You might not need 10,000 Instagram followers, but that's a conversation for another day. And so we focus a lot on teaching and building and executing strategies. We do trainings through our live events and our membership site, and then we do done-for-you stuff through our agency, Uncommonly More.
And you also have a podcast too, don't you?
I do have a podcast. We just released episode 460-something.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got Hit the Mic with the Stacey Harris. We talk a ton about strategy over there. One of our most popular episodes sort of the moment is the importance of staying in your lane.
Oh, that's really good. Oh,
yeah, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and it's getting really good feedback because it's so easy to go, oh, somebody else is seeing success by talking about this. Mm-hmm. I'll talk about that. But we end up attracting people who want to buy something other than what we offer and confusing the people who like thought they were going to buy from us because they were drawn to our actual offer. And so it ends up causing a lot of confusion, but it usually comes from a place of either wanting to take advantage of a trend or not having a plan and like knowing what you want to say.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wait, I'll just jump from thing to thing.
Yeah, it's that shiny object syndrome that people just get hit with all the time. And I understand it because, you know, you want to follow trends, you want to stay relevant, you want to do all these things, but you kind of need that strategy, which we're going to talk about today, which is building your 30-day social media strategy. But I think the first thing is we throw the word around strategy, that word strategy around a lot. What does that really mean? What does that mean to you when you're exploring social media with your clients?
So for us, a strategy is basically an SOP, a standard operating procedure. This is everything we're doing on social media for the next 30 days. This is where we're showing up. This is what we're posting. These are the hashtags we're using. These are the times we're posting them. This is who we're talking to. This is why we're saying any of this at all. Mm-hmm. And so that really, and this is the beauty of it, in my opinion, is literally anybody can step into that role and execute then. because it's very clear who's there. So if you're somebody who's maybe looking at handing things off soon, or you want to take advantage of somebody maybe you have on your team already and expand their role a little, but maybe they don't have an expertise in strategy, you can build the strategy and they can go execute, because you're literally giving them sort of the playbook, the guidebook, the step-by-step execution of how to do that. And they're way simpler than like IKEA instructions, which are like in a foreign language. These are actually followable. And you can literally hand them to anyone to execute. And you know what's happening. It keeps everybody on the same page. It's so important when you're doing it yourself, because you sort of put this work up front and then you can just sort of rock it out. But especially when you're investing in having somebody else, I almost think of the strategy as like the insurance that we're all on the same page.
Oh, I love that. So the strategy is the insurance that you're all on the same. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's kind of a lot of things, like, but it really is. It's the thing that makes sure we all know what's happening, even if all is just us. Sometimes when we're doing all the things, we don't totally know what's happening.
No, it's true. And I've been caught there sometimes when I haven't had my strategy laid out and I'm just like, okay, what should I post about today? You know, things got really busy in my work life. And so now I'm just like, grabbing things. And yeah, even if it's just you're a solo entrepreneur, a solo person, you need to have that strategy. So you said something that actually made me think of something. You said about 30 days. Do you need to change your strategy every 30 days, or can you keep that strategy the same?
Generally speaking, it's going to depend on what kind of service you provide. So for us, we work with a lot of info-based, online-focused entrepreneurs. So think about like speakers, business coaches, life coaches, wellness coaches, those kind of people, or service providers like copywriters, graphic designers, web designers. They have kind of a set offering they sell all the time, especially if you're somebody who's still primarily working one-on-one and you kind of have the same thing you're selling all the time. Your strategy is mostly going to be the same month to month. I do like to go in and do an audit and review so that we can use the data that we got from the first month to improve the second month, and so on and so forth. The reason I talk about 30 days up front is because it feels a lot more doable than a year. That is a big thing to take on. So when we build strategies for clients inside of Uncommonly More, we build 12-month strategies. And then we break them down into quarterly strategies, and we break those down into monthly tasks. And quite frankly, weekly tasks and daily tasks, depending on kind of what's in the strategy. But to start with, if you've never had a plan before, 30 days is long enough to commit to something, but short enough that you don't feel like you're like reinventing your business.
Yes, it's so true.
Because it is a new thing. It's, it's sort of like when you take on exercise. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to run for the next 30 days and see what happens. I cannot commit to life of running. I cannot commit to a marathon next year.
Right.
But I can commit to every day going outside and walking or running. Cool. And let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not get hard on yourself and so daunting? So, and maybe you're going to get into this, but and tell me if you want to wait to answer this question. But when you're doing every 30 days, do you think like a theme for the month? So, like, is that how do you organize it? I guess.
So we're going to kind of start getting into the house. So if you're ready to do that, I'm totally ready. So when we start any strategy, I don't care if it's for the next week, the next month, the next year, the next decade, two things. We're always answering two questions first. What are we selling and who are we selling it to? And so that what are we selling might be the thing for some people that changes month to month and does mean you kind of theme, especially if you're somebody who maybe has 4 or 5 different leveraged income, because I don't like the word passive income because not a single thing I've ever created was passive. So we talk about leveraged income, but let's say you have like an evergreen program. Let's say you've got 4 of them. We don't want to sell the same one every month. That's going to get mighty boring for you, right? So we'll theme out those months to sell each program. So that's where we start to see changes month to month. But we look at what are we selling and who are we selling it to? And the thing I want to touch on about who are we selling it to is not who do we work with in general, because high level, we probably have one ideal client. But our different offerings may be specifically different in where they are in their journey or where they are in their frustration level. A great example is in my business. We've got Hit the Mic Backstage, which is $100 a month membership. And you come in and you get trainings. And it's pretty much geared towards either social media service providers who want a place where they can stay up to date on things and ask a strategist questions, or people who are still deep in the woods of DIYing, or maybe they have just a virtual assistant on their team who is comfortable scheduling and executing, but not the strategy. And so they want to have a resource. So that's one person. All the way to our agency, Uncommonly More, where we are straight up doing strategy, execution of your social, your content, and your email. We're doing everything for you. Now, one kind of person resonates with me, my message, our team, but the specifics of where they are in their journey is different. So that's where we're looking at not just who do we sell to in general, but who are we selling this thing we're selling this month to? And we'll kind of theme out from there. What do we need to be talking about this month?
Okay, that makes sense. And then that kind of makes me want to backtrack a little bit, because you and I were talking before about, blueprints and why you shouldn't just pull from the next guru who's there. Can you talk about blueprints first off, what they are and where you'll find them, basically, and why you should maybe avoid them, or maybe you don't. Maybe you need to embrace them.
So first of all, if you want to hear me blabber on about this for about 20 minutes, we did a whole episode on it on the podcast. Go check it out. But essentially, I don't love blueprints because most marketing isn't one size fits all. We mostly have a unique way of looking at what we offer, and our audience is going to be different. So let's say, let's rewind. 4-ish years ago, Amy Porterfield and I both sold Facebook courses. Amy Porterfield and I are both very good at our jobs, but we're very different women. We speak about Facebook differently. Even if we're selling essentially the same, like, here's how to hit this button win, we teach differently. Mm-hmm. We have different brand voices. We have different teaching styles. We have different audiences. And so both of us taking the same blueprint would not get us the same results. Even though we're selling the same thing, and we do have some significant overlap in our audience, we're not going to be able to guarantee there's the same result on the other end. And when you're following a blueprint, we go back to our IKEA instructions. Mm-hmm. When we build the desk, essentially it should look, if I built it, maybe not, but if my husband built it, it definitely ends up looking like a desk when we're done.
I have extra parts left over when I build IKEA stuff.
I don't know why there's extra parts, but for some reason there is. So with a blueprint, we're going through and we're going to get a result, the same result at the end of the thing. There's too many variables when we start talking about marketing strategies. Blueprints can be great if you're going to customize it, if you're going to build from it. So when we do Backstage Live, which is our workshop where we build 90-day strategies with clients, when we do that, we're essentially working through the whole room's working through the same structured questions, but everyone's leaving with a different result. So that's the kind of blueprint that I do like, where we're all working through the same set of questions, but we're getting to our own destinations, versus a blueprint where it's like, do A and then B and then C, and then you'll get L. I don't know, whatever.
Right.
So that's kind of where I want to be conscientious of it. And the worst sort of perpetrator of bad blueprint things is all over Pinterest. We see these best times to post.
Yes.
Here's where you get that information. Go into your insights on any social media platform you use, and it will tell you your best time to post based on your audience. If I followed that, I would almost always do the opposite of what my results, what my insights say, and when my audience is actually online, which we don't want to be doing. And so that's an example of a really bad blueprint idea.
I love that. That's really good. I have a question about insights, actually. And it tells you when you're posting. Can you train your audience to actually respond to your posts when you want to post? Like, let's say your insights say you should be posting at 3:00 in the afternoon every day, but you really want to post at 8:00 in the morning. Can you essentially train your audience to go and see you at 8, or is that really strict, that little time slot?
It's not strict. Here's the thing is, if your content is incredible, yes, they'll show up. Think about, way back in the day, and I'm going to age myself here, before we had DVR. Mm-hmm. And you had to show, they called it appointment TV, right? Like when you wanted to watch Friends in the 90s, you sat your butt on the couch and you watched Friends at 7 p.m. on Thursday nights. Yes, I still remember when it was on. It was that level of commitment. It didn't matter what was happening in your worlds. And we all remember that like race to the restroom during the commercials. You're like, oh my God, I have to get back in time. I'm so glad we don't have to live through that stress. This generation has it so much easier than we did, right?
Yes.
But here's the deal. That was because the content was incredible. And so we made it a priority. Societally, we've made that even harder. Like the bar is even higher for how good your content needs to be. Mm-hmm. But here's why it's not super strict. Because here's the thing. It's not like your content disappeared at 3 o'clock.
Right. Exactly.
It's still there. And so you don't have to live and die by it, but I do suggest using it as a guideline. And that's why schedulers are so nice. I mean, you can schedule right inside of Facebook. You can schedule Instagram stuff through 437 different tools. You can utilize that. And I love a scheduled thing because then I can go and show up at 8 a.m. the next morning and respond to all the comments I got yesterday from 3 to 6 when my audience was on.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just that popped up and that question kind of popped in my head. And I know other people have had that question. And I want to
totally.
Yeah, get your insight on that. So tell us, now that we know why a blueprint to follow someone else's blueprint isn't the most ideal thing to do, how do we go about creating our own? Like, what are the steps? What are the strategies that we need to use?
So the good news is it's all reverse engineering. So we start with those 2 questions that I asked earlier. What are we selling and who are we selling it to? And from there, we think, okay, so what do we need to do to get them to the point where they're buying? And I don't mean in a sleazy, like, let's put them in enough pain that they're desperate for our solution. I mean, how do we help move them past resistance? We run into this a ton with especially our business coaches and our wellness coaches. Like, how do we move them past the resistance, the comfort of their current situation so that they'll move through some discomfort to get to the solution that they actually want to be in, right? And so we'll create content that speaks to that. A great example is in me selling our Backstage Live event, our in-person workshop. I have to move my audience generally through a little bit of resistance to planning. So we have content. In fact, we did an episode last week that was like the 3 ways you resist planning and how to overcome them. And so we're breaking that. Like, we know that that's sort of the theme for the month because we're selling that right now. So we're building content and then we're reverse engineering that content into social posts. So we're taking that content and we're saying, okay, so these were our 3 resistance points. Great. We can turn that into like 6 social updates. So it really is just reverse engineering their journey. Like, think about if we were going to give them directions to get to the destination that is our store. We're going to do that same thing, except we're going to sort of move them through that with a knowledge kind of thing. And that's how we build out our freebies. That's how we build out our content and how we build out our social. And so we're literally, and this is how we structure it in Backstage Live. We start with what are we selling and who are we selling it to? Great. Where do they need to be for us to sell that to them? What is their problem? What is their solution? Great. What are the big questions or resistance points or frustration points? What are all the reasons they're going to give you not to buy the thing? Great. That's now our content. That's now our social. For example, I did an Instagram post yesterday that spoke about how important planning is for me. What I've been able to do. We've hit our 2018 revenue goals by the 1st of July this year. We'll increase my business by at least 50% this year. All of that came from my plan. And so I spoke to here's what's possible on the other side, inside of our social, because I knew exactly where we were driving them to. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And congratulations. I saw that post on Instagram and I was like, you, Stacey, that is fantastic. That's awesome. So, so getting back to how you reverse engineer that. So do you just have like a brain dumping session with your team or whatever, and you sit down and you think about all the things and you jot those down? Okay.
I do. And this is it's funny, in Backstage Live in the workbook, there's just like big empty sheets of paper. And I'm like, I just want you to brain dump all the questions, all the thoughts. And here's the thing is so often these are FAQs. This is why I love little insider secret. This is why I love recording client calls. Yes, I provide the link for them so that they can listen to it later, but also I love going back and listening to them so I can hear all the things that are coming up from them as we're working through that thing, right? So I'll go through and I'll listen to those. And if you don't have a team yet, find a business buddy, find your coach, book an hour with a strategist. We do sort of one-off 1-hour calls for exactly this reason. Like, find somebody who can sit there and make you go, okay, what else? Okay, what else? Because it's really easy for like the first 5.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's all it got. And I'm like, no, there's more.
And that's the thing. Like, I think I would get hung up on that process because I'm good at like the first 5, but then it's like, I don't know what they know. Like, I don't know what their struggles are because either I'm too far deep into what I'm doing that I've kind of overcome them myself that I don't even think of them as struggles anymore, or I'm just too close to it. So find a business buddy. I like that. And just go out there. That is really...
Listen to any call recordings you have from client calls. Their intake forms are usually a great thing for this. All the things we put in place to help onboard or support clients, like maybe they have email check-ins or Voxer access to you, or you keep them in Slack or a Facebook group. Go look at those places and use their language because they'll give you everything you need to know. But just having somebody sit there and go, okay, what else? Okay, what else?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else? Will force you to like dig deep.
So, and what about that person who's just starting? Like, let's say they're just starting out and they don't have the frequently asked questions yet. They don't have those resources yet. Where do you direct them to kind of go so that they can reverse engineer that whole process?
So there's 2 things. One, a variable in this is sort of our best estimation. And this is why I do encourage people to so frequently go so deep in their building of their ideal client, sort of step into their shoes. The number 2 thing that I like to do is ask them. So if you have one client who you've worked with, or if you know somebody in your network who is somebody who is definitely your ideal, maybe they've already gotten past, maybe they don't need you. They've moved past needing you, but maybe they were in that place. Be like, hey, can I buy you coffee? And we sit down for half an hour and I kind of lovingly interrogate you and get some questions. Most people will say yes. And if they say no, well, then move on to the next person on the list. It's good practice for later in your business. People will say no.
Yeah.
But for me, it's sort of a mixture of that best guess and using whatever resources you have in your network. And this is why it's so important for us to do this over and over again. And by this, I mean not only the strategy, but revisiting who our ideal clients are. Because like this year, so we launched the agency in January. I hadn't had an agency before that. And so I hadn't had that section of my ideal client before. And so 8, almost 9 years into this, I had to go, oh, great. So we're starting this whole ideal client thing again. We review our ideal client in-house twice per year, every single year, twice per year, mid-year when we start our planning for the next year, and at the end of the year when we finalize our planning for that next year. Every single year, we do this twice a year because it does evolve. And so don't worry about getting it perfectly. When you're starting out, the most valuable part of having a strategy is that you have a structured way to collect data because you know that you did this and you got these results. And then you can use that data to inform month 2 and so on and so forth. And so don't worry too much about getting it perfectly, but it does help if you can, sit down and talk to a bunch of people.
Okay. So that's I have a question about, so we're reverse engineering, that end action we want those people to take. And you come up with all the post ideas with the brainstorming. What is the ratio to giving them valuable content versus selling to them? And what does that look like in that posting sequence?
So I'm a big believer that there's no one set formula. Mostly because I'm a big believer that sales done well is valuable.
Okay, I love that.
Yesterday, when I posted that post on Instagram about hitting those numbers, there's value in there in the sense that I'm telling you, this is what I did to get these results. If you want me to help you, buy this thing. But even if you don't buy it, there's evidence of what's possible. And I'm telling you a key part of my success. So even in that sales pitch, whether you buy or not, there is a nugget of value. Now, obviously, that one was a more sales forward piece of value than something I posted a couple days before that, where we were talking about the staying in your lane stuff and why that's so important, right? So like, I try and bring some shred of value into every single piece. What I want you to remember is you probably need to make a full-on forward-facing sales pitch twice as often as you think you do.
Really? Okay.
Because in most cases, we don't want to bother anyone.
Right.
We don't want to annoy them. In fact, I did an episode in January of this year on my show called Why I'm Committed to Annoying You. And it's because 2 or 3, it must have been, it was 4 years ago now. It was like 2015. Oh my gosh, my whole life is flying by. It's like 4 years ago. I set my goal in January. My word of the year was annoying. I committed to annoying every single person in my audience in 2015. And guess what?
Yeah.
My business tripled that year.
Are you kidding? Okay, so wait.
Go ahead.
Define annoying so that people, because I think there's a true definition of what you're looking at versus what maybe somebody else might be looking at.
So for me, every time I went, oh my gosh, I shouldn't send this email, I'm going to be bothering them, I've emailed them once already this week. Okay. Or if I post again today, I'm going to be annoying people. Oftentimes we think of our visibility and our marketing as annoying because we're aware of how often we are posting. Here's a little tip, guys. No one else is.
It's so true. I think we are so super self-aware of ourselves, and we're not really, because we're living inside our own little body here. People aren't there with us, although it feels like they are.
And we spend so much time thinking about our businesses and thinking about our marketing. And part of this is we confuse scrolling on social with marketing on social. And so we're like, well, I've been on Instagram every day this week. Yeah, but you haven't posted anything.
Yeah.
So no one knew you were here. And so when I talk about annoying people, I'm just saying I resist that part of me that says, and I don't actually have this filter anymore, which for better or worse, of, hey, you want to buy this? Hey, I can help you. What we're seeing as being annoying, they're seeing as a lifeline. They're seeing as like, oh my gosh, that's the solution. And it even comes up, we were talking about that, the episode I talked about was staying in your lane. So often we want to veer out of our lane because we're afraid we're boring our audience. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? They haven't heard the 16 other times this week you've said that. Mm-hmm. Because they're not paying attention to you in the same way you are paying attention to them. And this is, 4 years later, there's literally a sales pitch in every single email I sent. And that's in addition to just straight up sales emails that we send probably once or twice a month. Wow. And here's the best thing. Some people unsubscribe. They weren't going to buy anyways. But some people buy.
Yeah.
And it's because they went, oh yeah, I've been meaning to do that. Oh yeah, I've been meaning to book my ticket, book my consult, schedule my call, whatever the thing is. So don't worry so much about, am I doing this at a fair enough level? Am I doing this at an adequate enough percentage? I want you to say every time, is this valuable? Great. If you can answer that question, is this valuable? Then it's worth posting. And what I want you to do is be making sure at least every couple of posts gives them a call to action to buy. And every single post, in my opinion, should have some sort of call to action. Every single post. It's not always to buy, but it is always to take an action, which means in theory, we're always selling them on something. We're selling them on leaving a comment. We're selling them on sharing. We're selling them on leaving a podcast review. We're selling them on following us, buying something, opting in, reading the blog post, whatever it is. We're always selling in every single post because every single post gives them some next step because you don't want to leave them hanging. You just gave them this incredible value. That's only valuable if then they do something.
But that's really good advice. And I think a lot of times people are hesitant to ask for that call to action, whatever it may be, because they don't want to be annoying. But in your case, we want to be annoying. Like we
want to be annoying. Go for annoying.
Good. I love that.
Because when you can frame it as annoying,
yeah,
it's like, well, nothing's off the table. Let's go.
Let's do it. That's awesome. So,
I didn't get one piece of like email or like hate message that I was annoying ever.
No.
Just as an FYI, no one has ever actually told me that.
And your business it tripled. You said it tripled?
It tripled that year.
That is crazy.
It's because I told people where they could get the solution that I'd already convinced them they needed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I was just sort of taking them to the edge and then not giving them the parachute.
Which is perfect. That is perfect.
Which is mean.
No, but it's perfect. But you're doing them a service though by doing that, because then they realize what they really do need in order to get to their business to the next level, or whatever it is you're selling them. You're selling them that lifeline, and they need that. So we went through like the reverse engineering of how to do it. We did the brain dump. Are there any more steps in there to create the strategy?
So the other piece you're going to want to figure out, and honestly, I do this before the reverse engineering happens generally,
okay,
is where are you spending your time? And this is going to go back to who are we talking to? Because we don't want to try and be all the places. We're not going to be effective. However, I also don't want you to be in just one place. So we use the rule of twos, 2 primary networks and 2 secondary networks. The 2 secondary networks do not come into play until the 2 primary networks are on point. So you're going to start, if you're just sort of starting out, you're going to start with just those 2 primary networks. And the reason we have 2 primary networks is because if something happens to one, people still have a way to find us. Now, my caveat to this is don't forget that Facebook owns Instagram.
Okay. I was going to ask you about that.
They can't both be, if you have them as primary networks, you have to pick a third one. So for me, we use Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as my primary networks. These are the places I spend the most time. It also allows me to sort of hit the, for lack of a better word, sort of the entirety of the spectrum of my ideal clients, sort of where they're spending time. Because we have corporate contracts and stuff like that. That stuff comes from LinkedIn, not Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that makes sense. But like if we go back, oh my gosh, what was it, a month or 2 ago when Facebook and Instagram went down, I don't know, like 2 or 3 times in the course of a month, and people lost their marbles. Oh my gosh, full on upset. I wasn't impacted at all. You know why? I spent time on LinkedIn. I spent time on Twitter.
Yeah.
I spent time on my podcast. I spent time on my website. People still knew where to find me.
Yeah. So what are your secondaries then? So your primaries are Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, because Facebook and Instagram are really one entity. What are your secondary ones?
So our secondaries are Twitter and YouTube.
Really? Okay. So I have a question about Twitter then. How often a day are you posting on Twitter to make an impact?
So I post to Twitter about 20 times a day.
Okay. So I think I'm
bananas.
No, but I agree with you. I tell people you need to, if you're going to commit to Twitter, you need to be committing to at least 13 to 15 posts a day. Because you're just going to get lost in the noise. People are probably, if they're listening to us while they're driving, they probably just swerved in the other lane when you said 20 minutes a day. But I agree with that. Okay, I'm glad you said that.
And here's the thing. I'm going to pull back the curtain and tell you secrets now. Very little of that, in fact, none of that, is me live posting.
Of course.
I have so we use eClincher as our social media management tool, and I highly recommend it. One of the features eClincher has are cues. And so I have every podcast episode, every interview I've been on somebody else's podcast, all my sales messages set up in queues. And so they're scheduled to go out in certain times on Twitter. And this is actually how we fuel a lot of LinkedIn too. What happens is when it gets to the bottom of that queue, it shakes up the bucket and it starts again. So we're not even scheduling this stuff month to month. It's automated.
Okay, wait. So it's a randomizer. So it takes your posts and it shakes them up and then spits it out in different order. So if the person missed it the first time, they're going to get it later on, and it's not going to look like it's on repeat. Ooh, I love that.
Now, I will say I have the ability to do this because I have a epic amount of content.
Yeah.
This is harder to do if you started blog posts last week. There's just not as much there. I have a ton. But we go in and we do an audit of it. In fact, my team is working on this right now where we're auditing it and pulling out everything. Like guest interviews that I've done where the podcaster no longer has a show and the website's down. We take those out. Podcast episodes that I've done, especially because I talk about social media so much, there are episodes that I've done over the last 4 or 5 years that are not super relevant anymore, i.e. everything I talked about Google+. Useless. And so we pull those out of the queue. But what we're able to do then is sort of spend our time investment doing those kind of things, curating those kind of things. And I can spend my time investment in Twitter answering DMs, which are only like 1% of the time useful, replies to, because we have questions and quotes and stuff set up in queues too. So it looks like I'm asking questions and engaging. I feel like I've just ruined my Twitter. Everyone's gonna be like, it's Stacey, this isn't even real. But I go in and I'm able to answer those questions, engage with those questions, engage with those conversations that the original tweets are then prompting. So I can spend my time engaging instead of having to feed the content machine.
And that's more valuable, is that engagement, that relationship you're building. So, and I think, excuse me, and I think that people, they know that Twitter feeds are mostly curated anyways. Like they're all in those schedulers because it's impossible to be sitting there tweeting, as often as you need to.
It's true. I would prefer to, hang out with my audience and like talk to you guys and like
absolutely
clients get paid, quite frankly.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Okay. So we were talking about, the other steps in the strategy. And so that you told us that we needed to pick our 2 primary and our 2 secondary. So we've got that nailed down. So now what do we do?
So then we're going to be looking at when are we posting and how frequently are we posting. So with Instagram, we actually break this out even further. So let's say Instagram's one of the primary. We're going to break out even further because inside of Instagram, we have choices. We have IGTV, we have IG Live, we have IG Stories, and we have the IG Grid. So the first question is, which of these features are you going to use? Any or all of them? Like I don't do IG Live and I don't do IGTV. I've tested it. I've tried it. I'm sure we'll test it and try it again. My audience doesn't want to sit there for it. So I don't create it. However, I do create almost daily stories, and we have grid posts that go out a couple times a week. Well, guess what? Those stories, they are planned. We actually have spreadsheets that's our Instagram that we have. So, okay, behind the scenes again, we have spreadsheets of every social media post we ever post for me, for Uncommonly More, for each of our clients. This way we can go in and share them again should they still be relevant. So we're going in and we're saying, okay, so we're going to post these to the grid each week. And so for the course of a month, we usually do about 2 to 3 posts per week on Instagram. The most important thing is to pick a timing you can keep consistently, because the biggest hit we kind of take algorithm wise is when we stop that consistency. Then it sort of goes, oh, well, your account's dead. Or, it's so whatever you can do consistently. If that's once a week, if that's twice a week, if that's 3 times a week, more than that, and focus more energy on your stories. So I like 3 times a week. So we're going to come up with 12 spots on that calendar inside of our Excel doc. And the first column, it's the date. In the second column, it's a link to the graphic we'll be sharing. In the third column, it's the caption. And in the fourth column, it's the hashtags. And so we have all of that stuff laid out for those 12 posts for the month. And then in the very last column, we have stories. And so there's every single day, and there's basically the topic for the story. Sometimes it's a question I got asked on a podcast interview or with a client, and I'm like, ooh, that'll be a good story. Sometimes it's questions that I get asked in my DM because people DM me questions all the time, which I love. And usually I'll shoot a short answer via DM back to them. And I'll say, hey, I'm going to actually do this on stories next week. And I'll go and throw it on the calendar, and I'll do a public facing story, especially if they're not a client. Because if you're not a client, then we're going to make sure everybody gets the value. Mm-hmm. But I actually have all of that written out in that doc, so that all I have to do, let's say Monday morning, is open the document and I know what's happening. All the grid stuff has been scheduled through eClincher, and I know exactly what I'm going to be talking about in my story. So we go through and we make sure for our primary networks, and if we're to a point where we're using secondary networks, when are we posting? What are we posting? So the same is going to be true of Facebook. We're going to need to break this up a little bit because we've got Facebook stories, which quite frankly, I just duplicate my Instagram stories and share them in both places because like 4 people watch my Facebook stories. I'm not creating separate ones, guys. Also, because they're owned, all the features actually work in both places. You really don't need to create them separately. But maybe you do Facebook Lives. Maybe you have some Facebook groups that you need to be paying attention to, either because you run them or because you know that they are just a little client ATM machine. Great. I would, again, create a spreadsheet, have each of the columns, and I would know, okay, so this group gets this post. And what's great about that is then I can say, okay, so on the 3rd, we're going to post this to group A. On the 9th, we'll post it to group B. And on the 12th, we'll post it to group C. So I don't actually have to come up with all of these content pieces. I just have to customize them for each space they're going to and schedule them accordingly.
That's awesome. I love that. I need to check out this eClincher. I haven't looked at it before.
I love it. It's it sort of flies under the radar.
Yeah.
I will be honest, guys, it's not super attractive. They actually have a whole new layout rollout coming out, but they've prioritized over the last few years functionality over aesthetics, which I don't mind, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But we use it. We use it at an agency level. All of our client scheduling goes through it, for my personal brand and our corporate Uncommonly More brand. We run everything through it. I've used it for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years at this point. I love them. I did a whole podcast a couple of years ago reviewing it, if you want to check that out. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. It's a great tool.
That's awesome. Okay, so then where are we now in the strategy design here?
So now we're going to start putting things together. So this is where we kind of have all of our pieces. We know the what's that we're talking about. We know the wins, we know the wheres, and we know the who's. And so we're going to actually pull out those spreadsheets and we're going to start taking that brain dumped stuff and turning it into content. Now, we're talking about social media strategies today, so I want to stay in that column. But I will say that generally what I would do here is go into content mode, create the content so that I can then repurpose a lot of that content into social posts, because I am a big fan of getting every drop of value out of anything I create, because it takes too dang long to create it to not repurpose the bejesus out of it. So we get full transcripts of all of our podcasts. We literally can copy and paste out of transcripts into like Instagram captions and Facebook posts. But what we'll do here is we're going to start actually in our spreadsheet creating those posts, going in and creating the graphics, creating the captions, pulling the hashtags, and dumping all of that into our spreadsheet so that it can get scheduled. And so that's kind of the final step, is you kind of go into execution mode. And I like to do this kind of as one, not that you have to do it in one day, but sort of one big project.
Yes.
Because if I can put it all in spreadsheets, I can go in and schedule it. And now I have a month worth of social ready to go for all of my primary and secondary networks, so that the only thing I'm doing during the course of that month is engaging.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant right there, because that's what you should be doing. And then people are missing that. So,
and what happens is we end up spending so much time pushing the rock up the hill because we're trying to keep up.
Yes.
Get to engage. And that's actually where the money is.
That's right. Oh my God. You're so right. So getting back to your content for a second, I have like what comes first, the chicken or the egg thing. Like, what is it that drives your content? Is it a blog post? Is it a podcast? Like, what is it for you that drives that? Do you understand what I'm asking? Like, what's that?
Yeah. So I think everybody's got to figure out their best way they produce content. And by best, I mean the easiest, quite frankly. Like, not sort of how do you perform to it? Like, literally, what is the easiest way to get thoughts out of your brain and into some sort of consumable thing? Mm-hmm. For me, that's a podcast. I struggled trying to force myself to write blog posts for like the first 3 years of my business. And it was straight up painful. I was completely inconsistent. It took me so long to write them and I hated it. And then I started podcasting, which I should have done from the beginning, because my degree is in audio engineering. I can edit, podcasting, not a problem. I've loved podcasts since way before they were cool. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think I started my podcast slightly before it was cool. We've been going 5 years now. But yeah, it's so, for me, that's the easiest way. And then we get a transcript. We use rev.com to get a transcript and we edit it. I like putting a full transcript as my show notes because some people prefer to read. A lot of times I'll point to specific kind of how-tos like we've done today. Mm-hmm. This would be easier to go and follow up with like, oh, I just want to hear what she said about putting it in a spreadsheet again so that I can make my spreadsheet. Nobody wants to listen to the whole podcast to figure it out again, right? Also, for anyone in my audience who might have a difficult time understanding my accent because they're from someplace where this would be an accent, or I speak rather quickly, or maybe they have trouble hearing, I want there to be a solution for them. So that that blog post essentially is just a straight transcript of what I said on the podcast. So for me, the podcast comes first and then the blog post.
That's awesome. For me, it's reverse, honestly, because sometimes I need to like think it through. So it's a podcast first, or if it's a blog post first, And then I can talk to that, and then I can create posts from that. And it's so funny how we think like differently. Like
we have a couple of clients who are that way. They have to write their shows before they can say their shows. And it's so weird to me. Because I have a much bigger filter between my brain and my fingers, like typing, than I do my brain and my mouth. There's just no filter there.
You're so funny. That's awesome. So, what can you mention for us again? So that was it for the strategy part, correct? Is that
so we're just going to go straight into execution then.
And then do that. Okay. So can you tell us again what the name of your podcast is? Because I think people will want to tune in, because you've got actually, I started listening to you back before podcasts were cool, because I've been a social media manager for forever. And I was always craving the information that you give. And you're like the only person out there doing it. And I'm like, this girl's cool. I love her.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
my favorite interview ever.
Good. I like to hear it. So what's the name of your podcast again?
So we're Hit the Mic with the Stacey Harris. If you just search the Stacey Harris, you'll find me.
You'll find it.
If you just go to thestaceyharris.com, if you literally look at any social platform for the Stacey Harris, you will find me and my show. So that's sort of the best way to find it. And then also we have sort of a opt-in version of this conversation, walking you through building your 30-day strategy with like spreadsheets and stuff you can use at, I think it's thestaceyharris.com/30-day strategy. It's definitely at thestaceyharris.com though, at the bottom of any episode you look at. So yeah, those are kind of the best next steps as far as like getting more of this.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned a program that you have for, I think, social media managers or those type of people who want to stay up to date on trends and what's going on. What's the name of that program?
So we've Hit the Mic Backstage. So it's kind of the next level of the podcast. We've got inside of their trainings on how to build a year-long strategy, a quarterly strategy, a 30-day strategy, a weekly strategy, your daily task list, and how to get insights and analytics for all of those things so that you can measure, review, and make your next iteration. And then we've got a podcast guide in there, a Facebook guide, an Instagram guide, and we've got a LinkedIn, Twitter, and Pinterest guide coming in the second half of this year. So it's kind of your one-stop shop. Plus we've got a Facebook group as well as a private forum on the website where you can ask me questions, have me look at things. We do profile reviews. We are a small but mighty community. Social media managers like that space, DIYers like that space, a lot of virtual assistants like that space, because it is a great place to say, hey, I heard this. Is it relevant for me? Do I need to freak out? What's sort of my next step here? And that's at hitthemicbackstage.com, or you'll find it again at thestaceyharris.com. And
that's like a monthly membership. Is that what that is?
Yep. It's a monthly membership. It's $97 a month. You can cancel absolutely anytime. And it's sort of the best way to start working with me and getting sort of direct access to me because I run that community. It's not run by community managers. It's not run by somebody on my team. It's the best way to get like direct access to my brain is that space. And we do once a month, we do a live call where we come in and we call it the monthly member mastermind. You can submit questions. You can hop on the call with me and do video. We do like 15-minute hot seats in it. So it's a great way to get some coaching and some consulting and some support at a really doable budget level if you're not yet ready to invest in like hiring us to do a strategy or hiring a strategist full-time as part of your team. It's a great place to sort of get started, an incremental upgrade, if you will, to your team.
I love that. That sounds really good, really valuable. Stacey, this was amazing today. I'm so excited that you were here. I will put the link to your 30-day strategy in the show notes so you guys can have that, have access to Stacey and all that good stuff. And guys, tune into her podcast. It's awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey there, I just want to say thank you for spending time with me here today. I know your time is super valuable, which is why I am dedicated to providing lots of usable, actionable information in the shortest amount of time possible. Before you go, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. And if you have ideas or topics you would like me to cover in an upcoming show, let me know about it in the comment section provided.